Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for a quick revisit of James Day's Iron and Oak. Now the reason I am bringing this back out is because when I last visited this game in the, I think it was the summer of last year, I touched on the way that, it's a wonderful game system. It's American Civil War naval combat, done light, I would say. An awful lot of it is opposed dice rolls. And those of you who are familiar with the game will know that a lot of the very clever mechanics, as enshrined on the rather excellent player aids, they really exist just to help the game flow and for the really complicated stuff to happen in the background while you're making the important tactical decisions. And I do like the way, although it's very simplistic, this game very cleverly allows you to get a feel for the I'll say the inadequacies of American Civil War era vessels. Yes, they were groundbreaking, they were technologically incredible for the 1860s, but they had their problems, particularly when it came to propulsion. Now, the other thing is, those of you who either own this game or who know it well, or who might have seen some of my previous videos on the subject, may notice there's something slightly different. Now, let's have a look at what this could be. I've already glanced at the player aids. Could it be the ship cards? No. Everything looks as it should do with our four vessels here. Order cards? No. Ah, hang on a minute. Could it be these things? If that's what you were thinking of, then you are absolutely right, because these beauties are not the ship counters that come with the game. These are, in fact, some rather lovely ones that I found on Wargame Vault not so long ago. And sorry, I'm just reaching over very awkwardly to show you this lovely sheaf of ships that I downloaded and printed off. And these are marvelous because the vast majority of American Civil War ships are represented in this set, the warships at any rate. They're really affordable. I don't think I paid very much for these at all. And the beauty of it is you've downloaded the files, even if your little counters suffer from wear and tear over time, you can easily print out and make replacements. And yes, they are just color printed, stuck on a bit of cardboard. And so there you go, in instant warships that look very, very good. Now, complete as this set is, there are one or two very minor vessels that they do not have, and which are represented in iron and oak, but sister ships, broadly speaking, are present. So if you're desperate, you could always make a substitution. You could also change the name of a vessel in order to make it the appropriate ship. So you're not without options when it comes to these beauties. Now, for those who are wondering why I have gone and done this, let me show you the counters that you actually get with this game. And I don't mean this as a criticism, because I do love this game to bits. And the counters are beautiful, but they are rather small. So if I put USS Chickasaw here next to USS Cincinnati, you can see what I mean. That's rather tiny. And this game is not enormous, but it does have a significant footprint when it comes to the average dining table, as you can see. There's quite a lot going on, so very often I find that I play this game standing. And when you do a very busy scenario, like, running the guns at New Orleans or something like that, where you can easily have nearly 20 ships, if not more, on the US side, Unless you've got a good memory for who's where in the battle line, it starts to get a bit difficult. But with these things, you've got lovely counters that are nearly twice the size. The names are, I won't say they're any more legible, but they stand out very well on that blue background. Plus, while it doesn't really matter that much and it's really a question of personal taste, I tend to prefer top downs in this sort of tactical game. And much as I love these guys, having these gorgeous side views could be a bit disconcerting, especially in those moments when the ships come into close combat situations, because there are, of course, rules in this game for ramming your opponents, crossing the T, boarding, that sort of thing. So if I borrow the very interesting looking Confederate General Beauregard, just to show you what I mean, in game terms, if the General Beauregard crossed the T of the Chickasaw, you would butt the counters up like that, or place them in very close proximity just to show that the T had been crossed. And when you've got side views, that does look a tiny bit weird. Maybe it's just me, but it was something I'd been wanting to fix for a while, and we had a bit of an exchange. Some of you had messaged me about whether I used substitutes in this game for the game counters that you're supplied with, and now, of course, I can happily demonstrate that the answer is yes. A follow-on question that I got to this was, can you use minis? Because, of course, nothing looks better than 3D. Do minis work in a very abstracted game like this one? And again, I'm going to say the answer is yes, but you have to be a bit selective about what you pick. Now, the game board that you are given in Iron and Oak is fairly hefty. You've effectively got 5x5 grid, which sort of marks out your battle area and allows you to regulate movement and range and so on. But you have to be a bit careful about what models will fit, because obviously bigger models look better, but smaller models probably are the sweet spot, really. But just to help, it's all very well me blabbing on about this. Probably handier if I've got some things to show you. So for my demonstration models, I've decided to pick on the American Civil War's two poster girls as far as ironclads go, because these are the ones everyone has heard of. I speak, of course, of Monitor and Virginia. So just to do a bit of a comparison, the counters I got from Wargame Vault, of course, maybe a good place to start. So here you go. You've got the Monitor and the Virginia to scale. This is roughly 1/1200, in case anyone was wondering. And that is what they look like, occupying the squares in the game. Now, if you're feeling inventive, or you've got a larger playing space that you want to give over to Iron and Oak, there's nothing to stop you creating a much larger 5x5 grid that you could use big models on. But just to show you what it looks like if, let's say, you decided you didn't want to use two-dimensional top-downs and you preferred miniatures. Here are our two ships again, same scale, 1/1200, but minis. And I've got to admit, that does look rather good to me. I really like those two. And of course, if you had a bigger scenario where you had lots of ships, then it would look pretty amazing, even on this paper surface. As I say, you could create something a bit more extensive that looks even better. So I would say the best scale, really, whether you do counters or minis, is 1/1200. You can get away with 1/600. Now, there are some really good ranges out there. I mean, just for those who are wondering, Yeoman Models produced those two, and they're done in resin. But if you go bigger, if you go to someone like Thoroughbred Miniatures, who are one of the best suppliers of Civil War wargaming models. They do 1 to 600 scale, and you get these monsters. Now, something fairly diminutive like Monitor, not too much of a problem. But when you get to something much larger like the former Merrimack, you're suddenly finding that you may have problems because she goes over the edges. Even with a smaller base, it's a tight fit. And of course, if you get a situation where Virginia is wanting to cross the Monitor's T, then you're definitely spilling out beyond your square. Now, for a duel between two vessels, like, say, for example, here, because I know there were other ships present at the Battle of Hampton Roads, but let's face it, it really did boil down primarily to these two. You can just about get away with it. But I would say that 1/600 scale models are pretty fiddly. More so if you get a scenario with lots of the Union's fully rigged ships present. That then becomes quite difficult. So that pretty much covers how pretty these things look, and what you could sort of expect visually and practically if you have these on your board. But how would a game play using these replacements? Would it affect anything? I mean, the obvious answer is no. You've basically just substituted one set of counters with another. But the one thing I do really like about the Wargame Vault ones is that because as you go through the game, you pick up a lot of informational counters, like USS Osage here is covered in light smoke because she's been engaging in a fairly heavy amount of fire. You have more room on these bigger counters to stack your information counters, and it's a bit more clear, I find, which one is associated with which ship. The other thing I really like is that unlike the games counters, these are of course to scale. So you do get a real sense of what they were like in relation to each other. Because if any of you are wondering, slight change of pace, the scenario I'm playing is a battle that never actually happened. And this would have been perhaps the last stand of the CSS Tuscaloosa and the CSS Huntsville. Now, these ironclads were broadly designed to be sister ships. They were all right as far as they went for late Confederate efforts. They were planned in the early part of the war, but because of a lack of resources, they were completed quite late. And although they were respectable enough when it came to protection, they were quite weakly armed, it's believed. And their machinery combined with their very blocky hull form meant that they were really not that much up to scratch. But you know, when you say casemate ironclad, it's easy to imagine some sort of enormous behemoth. But as you can see from the scale of these things, they're actually pretty diminutive ships. Even the Cairo type semi-ironclad, the Cincinnati, leaves them behind in the size department. So I, for one, find that very interesting and also quite useful in helping to picture what it is that's in front of me and also how big it is. I think I just like to I like to know these things. Also, I've just realized I've positioned them facing downriver. That wasn't terribly clever. So, as I say, this scenario never actually happened in history. After the Union victory at the Battle of Mobile Bay, the Confederates initially wanted to use their remaining vessels to block the passage up Spanish River. But in the end, these two, because they were so unmaneuverable and in a way were deemed to be a bit more trouble than they were worth, were scuttled to prevent them being captured by the advancing Union forces. Now, what this scenario postulates is what would have happened if they had if they'd been retained and they'd been ordered to fight it out against any Union naval forces that tried to push upriver. Now, we don't know what the composition of any Union force would have been had the ironclads been there. As it was, when the Confederates scuttled them, the Union just pushed on with a lot of its ships. But in the game scenario, they give you the Osage and the Cincinnati. And I really like this one because you get two Confederate ironclads that are quite interesting, even though they never got a chance to really do anything. You also get two rather fascinating Union vessels. I really like the class that Cincinnati represents, and I'm really glad that USS Cairo is still preserved. Ironically enough, because she hit a mine and sank, but did so largely intact. But the USS Osage, she's not the best known Union ironclad, but she's one of the most interesting as an example of simply bizarre naval architecture. And I will just find a picture of her because here we go. So this is from the scenario book for the Spanish River battle, and that is USS Osage. Osage. I'm really sorry if I'm mispronouncing her, guys. Please do tell me in the comments if I'm getting her name badly wrong. But isn't that the most incredible looking ship you've ever seen? She reminds me a little bit of USS Keokuk, but not as well balanced, and a very odd ugly duckling. But you know what they say, never go by appearances. She was apparently one of the more successful Union warships, and her crew apparently very happy, very well trained, and gave a pretty good account of themselves throughout the ship's service life during the conflict. And I think that's the reason that of all the vessels participating in this scenario, she is the one credited with having a crack crew. So, all right, let's just get that to focus. Come on, buddy. Yay. So, there we go. A very quick look at some alternatives to the game counters that are supplied with iron and oak. It is something that I promised a while ago I would do, so I was glad to finally, when I was rooting around in the attic trying to find these things, eventually manage to hit on them, and in a completely differently marked box. You'd have thought someone sensible would have just scribbled ironclads on the outside of a box, but no, I think I'd gone and put them in the wrong one. So sorry this one has been so long in coming. For those of you who own this game and want to upgrade it in a similar way, I will put the details of all the suppliers I've mentioned in the description, because I mean, you don't just have to use these models with iron and oak. If you happen to like your tabletop miniatures wargaming and you have rules like smoke on the water or ironclads or any of the others, these are equally good for those. So if they are of use to you, I will put those references in, and I hope you guys have fun assembling ships as much as I have. But I will leave that there for now. I have to get back to the rather trying business of forcing my way past these two stubborn Confederates who've decided to make a fight of it after all. It's been one of those typical Civil War battles so far. I've been struggling up the river against the current. Osage seems to have slightly more efficient engines, which is why Cincinnati has fallen behind. I was trying to keep them both together so I could concentrate my fire. Shots have been exchanged, but as is often the case in the ironclad era, very little real damage has been done. I've hit both the Huntsville and the Tuscaloosa several times, but the only one that seems to have suffered is the Tuscaloosa, which has lost a few plates of armor, but otherwise meh. The Confederates are having an equally frustrating day, although I will give them a bit of credit. Their last shot bashed a few plates off my side armor, and a fragment of one actually entered my hull, so that was rude of them. Gonna have to see what we can do about that. But my orders are fairly straightforward. sink, burn, or take the two Confederate warships, or if that doesn't prove practical, push on up the river. In order to stop me from taking the mick and simply charging upriver and leaving it at that, I am only allowed to proceed upriver after I've had a bit of a punch up with them. In game terms, that means I am only allowed to try leaving the board from turn 20 onwards, which in a 30-turn game is quite a lot of dawdling time. So I foresee, at least, we are at the start of turn 15 now, I foresee a lot of turns where I'm going to be alternately circling around them, bouncing shot off their casemates until they give up. Yeah, I can whistle for that one. I know there was only one CSS Tennessee at Mobile Bay, but she was a bit more outnumbered than these two are. If the worst comes to the worst, I may just try and ram them. We shall see what happens. But I shall crack on with that. I won't subject you to a sort of playthrough with this one because you've probably, those of you who've seen my previous video will know that you have to make opposed dice rolls for nearly everything in this game. And the early part of my experience of this scenario, quite realistically, but it doesn't make very good watching, has been me trying to get the dice rolls so that my ironclads can actually struggle into engagement range. And although we've been there a few turns now, it has been the stereotypical Civil War riverine battle of just expending a lot of iron to put a few dents in the other guy. So I will leave you guys to get on with whatever you've got to do while I try and advance the Union Navy's drinks cabinet 6 inches closer to the Confederate hinterland. And to all of you who have been watching this, thank you very much indeed. It's always a pleasure to have your company, as always. I really do appreciate it. If you own a copy of Iron and Oak, or if you're part of a group that plays this lovely game, I hope that this video has been useful, given you some ideas of how to jazz it up a bit. And of course, if you've got any games planned, I really, really hope you enjoy them. It would be good to hear which scenarios you're up to. Are you playing a campaign? Let me know how you're getting on either way, because it's always good to hear these things. I am thinking of starting a campaign myself because so far in this game, I've only ever played the individual scenarios. So that might make a nice change, especially as I have all of these lovely things to play with now. So thank you very much for following the series. As I say, always great to see you guys. To all my veterans, a very big hello, and I hope you guys are all doing well. If it's your first time here, you're more than welcome. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it interesting. If you're here because of Iron and Oak, please do check out the other videos I made. Oh gosh, it was last summer, I think, but they are up. They should be on the same playlist as this video. If it's wargaming in general that's brought you here, you are more than welcome. Please have a meander around and see if there's anything else you like. And but whoever you are and wherever you may be watching from, it has been very good having you. Blah, blah, blah. Let me try that sentence again. I'm sorry. It's been very good having you guys aboard. Please do feel free to leave comments, suggestions, queries. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care. Bye.